Okay, our next topic is the phytoremediation. As you know, we are studying the paper 2 and the chapter number 5, that is the ecology and the plant geography. Now, under this specific topic, in the last few video lectures, we have studied about the pollution, okay, how pollution occurs. In that regard, we have studied about the biomagnification, then we have studied about the eutrophication, and after that, we have also studied about the acid rains, right? So all these are nothing but the effects of the pollution which is done by the anthropogenic activities, that is the human activities, and that is why it becomes very important to control this particular pollution. Now, whatever the pollution which is occurring, whether it's a chemical pollution or the physical pollution or the environmental pollution, any type of pollution, if we want to control it, we have to apply certain kinds of the technique. So one of them is the phytoremediation. Now, this particular term phytoremediation is made up of the two types of the word, that is the phyto and the remediation. Okay, phyto is nothing but the plants. Okay, and remediation means to extract. Okay, so we are using plants here to extract the pollutants which are present in the water or in the soil. Okay, so basically the pollution controlling measure is a phytoremediation, and phytoremediation is a very peculiar technique in which we specifically use some kind or the other kind of a plant to clean up the any area which is already polluted. Okay, so consider this is your syllabus. We are dealing with the paper number 2 and the chapter number 5, that is the ecology and the plant geography, and we are here at the phytoremediation. Okay, now consider the very first slide. See, the phytoremediation uses the vegetation to contain, sequester, remove, or degrade the inorganic or the organic contaminants of the soil, sediment, surface water, or the groundwater. So, if you want to define the phytoremediation, if you want to explain the definition of a phytoremediation, it is nothing but that we are using the vegetation, that is, we are using the plants to contain or to sequester or to remove or degrade the organic or the inorganic contaminants. Whatever the organic contaminants are there, or if they may belong to the inorganic content. Okay, whatever the type of pollutant is there, if that pollutant is present in the soil, in the sediment, on the surface water, or on the groundwater, if you want to remove these pollutant, whether they are the inorganic or the organic pollutant, if you want to remove that pollutant, and for this if we are using the vegetation, then we call that specific process as a phytoremediation. So phytoremediation is nothing but the cleaning of the soil, or say contaminated soil, or cleaning of the contaminated sediments, cleaning of the surface water or the polluted groundwater by using the plants. Okay, so this is nothing but the literal definition of the phytoremediation, that it is a process or it's a technique in which we are going to use the plants or the vegetation to clean up the soil, sediment, surface water, or the groundwater if they are polluted by the organic or the inorganic contaminants. Okay, now see, it operates through the several mechanisms, okay, to remediate the contaminants. Now this particular phytoremediation process is not that much simple as we are saying. It will depend on the which type of the organic or the inorganic type of the content or the polluted pollution type of the area is there. That is it will literally depend on which type of the pollutant is there, and according to that we are going to use the specific kinds of the plant and a specific type of the procedure. So the phytoremediation is not the single technique, but it is a collection of technique. Okay, many types of sub techniques are there which are present within the phytoremediation, and it will differ from pollutant to pollutant, from area to area. That is, for cleaning the soil we will use the one kind of phytoremediation, and if you want to clean the groundwater, then we will use the different kinds of the phytoremediation. Okay, so the whatever it operates through the several mechanism to remediate the contaminants. Okay, now see, some of these processes such as the phytoextraction or the rhizofiltration, that is, they extract the contaminants from the soil or the water. For example, in the phytoextraction, we are extracting the pollutant from the soil, and we can also use the rhizofiltration to clean up the water as well. Okay, and then assimilate in the harvested biomass. For example, we have planted this specific plant for the phytoremediation, and if the contaminants are present in the soil, now consider these are the heavy metals and the contaminants which are present in the soil. Now, once we plant this tree, what the tree will do? It will absorb all of these contaminants into their roots. Okay, and once they absorb all these contaminants in the root, this will literally transport it to the plant body. Okay, now after some time of the growth and development within the plant, we can take out this plant, and in the process we are taking out the harmful heavy metals which are present, which were present in that particular area or the rhizosphere. Whatever the root area is there, this root area is called rhizosphere, and in this rhizosphere, if there are contaminants or the heavy metal contamination is there, this contamination will automatically uptaken by these particular plants, and once they were uptaken and they were present within the plant body, we can extract out this plant along with the roots. And hence in the process what we have done, we have cleaned the soil, okay, by using the plants. And this is the literal definition of the phytoremediation, when we say we are using the plants for the cleaning the soil or to clean the water, okay. And the contaminants may be the heavy metals or the other kinds of contaminants may be there, okay. It will all depend on the site to site, okay. It will differ from site to site. So whether we are going to use the phytoextraction or the rhizofiltration, it will all depend on which type of pollutants we are dealing with, okay. Now consider, see, the very first method regarding that is the phytoextraction or the phytoaccumulation, okay. So as we have already discussed that the phytoremediation can be divided into the many sub methods. So one of them is the phytoextraction or the phytoaccumulation. Now let us see what we do in that. See, the removal of the inorganic contaminants from the soil through the plant uptake and the subsequent harvest of it, and the removal of biomass is called as the phytoextraction or the phytoaccumulation. Now see, if some of the area is a polluted area, for example, the soil is polluted here and many heavy metals are there within this particular area. So what we do, we have planted this tree, okay. After planting this tree, these roots will develop into the ground, and these roots will absorb the heavy metals or any type of pollutant which is present within the rhizosphere, and this rhizosphere will be then present within the body of the plant, okay. So now the pollutant which were first present within the soil, now it is present within the body of a plant, right. Now hence we are calling this particular method as a phytoaccumulation, because here the accumulation of the pollutants is occurring within the plant body. Then what we do, we will remove the biomass of this particular plant from this area, okay. We just take out this plant, and along with these plants we are taking out all of the heavy metals or any type of the pollutant which is present in that particular rhizosphere area. So in this way, in the phytoextraction is typically used to remove the metals from the soil, okay. For example, here are the many metals, and metals are absorbed by the roots, and these roots will transport these metals into the plant body, and in the biomass of the plant body it will get accumulated. Hence we are using the term phytoaccumulation. And now we will literally take out whole of the biomass of this plant, and hence this particular area will get cleaned, okay. So this particular process in which we typically use for the extraction of the metals from the soil, this particular method is called as phytoextraction or the phytoaccumulation. Now consider the second method, which is called as the phytodegradation. Now here, as the title suggests, the degradation literally means here the toxic element is going to degrade, okay. Now see the breakdown of the contaminants by the metabolic processes in the plant, okay. If they are taking the heavy metals or any type of pollutant and accumulating within the body of a plant, and plant's own metabolic processes are breaking down that particular chemical compound, then we are calling that type of the phytoremediation as a phytodegradation, because here in this particular process the plants are going to extract the pollutants from the soil and take them into their body, and by using their metabolic processes they can literally break down these particular contaminants, and hence we need not to extract out the plant this time, because the plant is able to degrade that particular pollutant and convert them into the less pollutant form, and hence in this case the plant can remain there for forever, right. And in the process they can clean up this particular site for forever. Now also it will include the breakdown of contaminants in the soil by the enzyme, okay. For example, they can degrade the whatever the pollutant which is present in the soil by extracting the certain kinds of the enzymes or other products by produced by the plants, okay. Whatever the secondary metabolites or the enzymes which are produced by the plants are used to degrade these particular chemical compounds which are present within the soil, okay. It is primarily used for the organic contaminants. If the soil is contaminated by the organic contaminants, then and only then we will go for the phytodegradation, because majority of the organic contaminants are degraded by the plant itself, and hence it becomes very important if that we first should check that which type of the pollutant is present within the soil, and according to that we should use the phytoremediation technique. If the polluted soil contains the many organic contaminants, then we should go for the phytodegradation, and this particular phytodegradation process will extract all the organic chemical compounds which are present within the soil, and once they are present within the plant body, they can be degraded literally. Or the second method is there, that the plant can produce the enzymes, or it may produce the secondary metabolites, and these secondary metabolites or the enzymes can degrade these organic contaminants in the soil as well, okay. So the second method we are using for the phytoremediation is the phytodegradation, okay. Now the third method is called as the rhizofiltration or the rhizodegradation. Again, here we are using the word rhizo, that literally means the roots are going to involve primarily, and then there is a filtration, that is the roots are going to filter something, and here we are also using the word degradation, that the roots are going to degrade something, okay. So the rhizofiltration or the rhizodegradation is a third type of phytoremediation, in which the roots will play a major role in the phytoremediation. Okay, now see the breakdown of the organic contaminants in the soil. See, the contaminants are either absorbed into the plant surface or absorbed by the plant roots. Okay, either these particular contaminants may be absorbed at the root surface, or maybe it is completely absorbed by the roots within their internal structures. Now these contaminants are broken down by the enhanced microbial activity in the rhizosphere. As you know, in the rhizosphere there were the many metabolic activities going on, and actually there is a whole area in which there is a microbial activity within the rhizosphere. Okay, so this rhizosphere shows the microbial activity, and in this particular, due to this particular microbial activity, these are harmful organic contaminants are going to degrade here. Okay, so the rhizosphere is nothing but the it's a zone of a soil which is influenced by the roots. Okay, for example, this is the plant. Okay, this is the shoot above, and below here we have the root, and this particular area is called as the rhizosphere because here the roots are playing the major role, and roots can actually influence this particular area within the soil. So whatever the microbial flora which is present around the root or within inside the root, once these contaminants, organic contaminants, come in contact with, they will literally get degraded, and hence we are calling this particular type of the phytoremediation as the rhizofiltration or the rhizodegradation, where the roots play a major role, and with the roots, whatever the microbial organisms are there around this particular rhizosphere, these were also playing a major role. So in the third type of the phytoremediation, you should carefully remember that the roots are playing major role, and hence we are giving the heading that is the rhizofiltration or the rhizodegradation. Okay, now consider the fourth one, that is the phytovolatilization. Now here we are using the word volatilization, that means the for the volatile activity. Okay, now the uptake of the contaminants by the plant and release them into the atmosphere as the plant transpires the water. Now see here, now you can understand why we are using the word volatilization. Here what the plants are doing, whatever the harmful chemicals are there within the soil, these are literally absorbed by the plant, and once they were in the leaves, here the process of transpiration may occur. Okay, so after the transpiration, transpiration is nothing but the loss of water in the form of water vapor. Okay, if the plant is losing the water in the form of water vapor, then we call this particular process as a the transpiration. Okay, and the stomata is the primary structure which is involved in this particular process. Okay, so the removal of the water vapor from the plant body through the stomata is called transpiration, and along with this transpiration, many types of the contaminants will also evaporate into the environment. As you can see here, the volatilization is given here, and here see how the harmful chemical compound which are firstly absorbed by the roots, then it is accumulated in the leaves, and once they were accumulated in the leaves, through the process of transpiration, they will literally given out to the environment, and hence the volatilization has occurred, and hence this particular sub method which is used in the phytoremediation is popularly called as the phytovolatilization. Okay, so here in the phytovolatilization, whatever the pollutants which are present within the soil, these are readily uptaken by the plant, and they were transported to the leaf, and through the leaf, through the process of transpiration, they will literally volatilize into the environment. See, the contaminants is removed from the soil and may be degraded as it moves through the plant's vascular system before finally removed from the system. Okay, so in between the transportation, they may get degraded, but if they are not getting degraded in between the vascular tissues, then they will be removed through the process of volatilization by using the particular process called as transpiration through the stomata. Okay, so this is the fourth method, that is the phytovolatilization, which is involved, which we can use in the phytoremediation. Okay, now let us consider the fifth one, which is called as the phytosequestration or the phytostabilization. Now see, this process sequesters or reduce the contaminant bioavailability through the precipitation or immobilization of the contaminants in. So in this particular process of the phytostabilization, here we are using the word phytostabilization, that literally means here the pollutants or the contaminants are going to stabilize by the plants. Okay, now how? See, if the phyto or the contaminants which are present within the soil are around the rhizosphere of the plant. Okay, now what this rhizosphere will do, it will actually stabilize these types of the pollutant within the within that particular rhizosphere, and it will not allow to movement of these particular contaminants to the other places, and hence we are saying, that the availability of these contaminants will not be there for the other areas of the soil. For example, the contaminants are situated here, and these contaminants are heavily surrounded by the rhizosphere of the plant. Now this rhizosphere will literally stabilize this pollutant to this area only, that literally means these particular contaminants will not move from this rhizosphere to the other areas, and hence their bioavailability is reduced. Okay, So due to the rhizosphere acting on these particular contaminants, these become immovable even after there is a precipitation. Okay, because generally what happen if there is a bare soil, okay, and no plants on these soils are there, and if it is heavily contaminated, and if the rain comes on it, what will happen, the rains will literally combine with these pollutants, and these pollutants along with the water can move to the other parts of the soil as well, where they can contaminate the other areas as well. Okay, so here what the plant is doing, plants are doing the phytostabilization. That literally means the pollutant, whatever the pollutants are there which are present within that particular rhizosphere, these rhizosphere will hold these contaminants, and these contaminants will not be available anywhere else within the soil, and this will greatly reduce the soil pollution. Okay, so here on the root surface or within the root tissue, they can hold the pollutant, and due to this holding, the bioavailability of this pollutant will be greatly reduced. Okay, and that is why we are giving the particular title called as the phytosequestration or the phytostabilization. Okay, now consider the sixth process, which is called as the phytohydrolysis. Okay, now this process is used to limit the movement of contaminants with the water. Okay, if the contaminant is going to move with the water through the process of the phytohydrolysis, we can actually contain that particular pollutant within a very small space. Okay, and it will not move then along with the water. So if you don't want to move the pollutant out from the one area to the other area, and it should not get mixed with the water to travel to the other area, then we will use the technique which is called as the phytohydrolysis. Now the plants are used to increase the evapotranspiration and thereby controlling the soil water and the contaminants movement. For example, if the water is coming in a large quantity here, we can actually increase the evapotranspiration from the plant, and that is the transpiration through the water vapor, and hence all of this water can be absorbed by the plant, and it can do the transpiration so that it will get converted into the water vapor, and hence the water, not only the water but also the contaminants will not move from the rhizosphere of the plant to the other areas of the soil. So basically in the phytohydrolysis, what we do, we will restrict the water that is going to take the pollutant to the other areas, and we will restrict this water by increasing the capacity of the plant of the evapotranspiration. That is, the plant should do the more transpiration, the plant should take up the more water, and it will release to the environment in the form of water vapor, and in this way we can also control the majority of the pollutants which are going to pollute the other parts of the soil. Okay, so see, this mechanism contains the contaminant by modifying the site hydrology. Okay, here in this particular process, the water is an essential factor, and we have to change the site hydrology in order to restrict the pollutant from spreading to the other areas, to reduce the vertical and the horizontal movement of the water in the soil. That is, the water is the primary vector for these particular pollutants, and if we restrict the water, in the sense we can also restrict the pollutant as well, and hence we should modify the hydrology of that particular area once we are using the phytohydrolysis. Okay, by increasing the evapotranspiration within the plants. Okay, so these are the six methods which are used in the phytoremediation. Now let us consider what are the different advantages of the phytoremediation. Okay, now the phytoremediation design can use the multiple mechanism to address the multiple contaminants or concerns simultaneously. For example, if there are the different types of the pollutants, okay, and if there are the different types of the areas, for example, sometimes we have the polluted soil, sometimes we have the polluted water. So for each one of this category, the phytoremediation has its own answer. For example, the phytoremediation is not the static technique that it can't be altered, but it can be altered from place to place, from pollutant to pollutant. We can alter this particular phytoremediation process, and we can actually clean up the soil. So here the phytoremediation technique, the very first advantage of it is that it is the very flexible technique. We can use according to the need. For example, we have the organic contaminants, we can use the one specific technique, and if we have the another inorganic type of the contaminants, then we will use the another type of phytoremediation. So this flexibility which is given by the phytoremediation is very natural, and hence it has the much advantage over the other techniques of the remediation. Now for example, see here, if the plant species may be able to remove the organic contaminants through the phytovitalization, and also remove the risk associated with the inorganic contaminants through the phytosequestration or the phytostabilization. That is, we can use the phytovolatilization of phytosequestration or the phytostabilization according to our what is the need. According to that, so these different types of the methods can be applied to the different types of the places, and hence this flexibility which is shown by the phytoremediation is the great advantage of the Now, the second advantage which is provided by the phytoremediation is that it is generally a passive process or performed without the removal of the contaminated soil or the water, which requires the less maintenance and the fewer external energy inputs than the alternative treatments. Okay, so basically, what we are saying here, the phytoremediation is the quite cost-effective technique. Okay, it's a passive technique. Okay, not much of the energy is needed, much of the labor is not needed to do this. Okay, simply just what we want to do is just to plant the trees in the polluted areas, and once you plant the trees in a polluted area, that's over. The rest of the work is done by the plants. Okay, so no, there is no much not much energy to input in this particular process, and hence this process is very cost effective. So the second advantage of the phytoremediation is that the cleaning of the contaminated soil or the water, it will generally require the more and more energy. Okay, if you prefer the other methods, but during the phytoremediation, what we have to do, just simply we plant the trees in that particular polluted areas of the soil or the water, and these plants will do rest of the work, and here's not of the much energy inputs is required throughout this particular process. Okay, now see, the phytoremediation with the vegetation will also improve the aesthetics. Okay, now for example, if there is a polluted area which looks very bad upon the first impression, but if you plant the trees will make this area very beautiful. Okay, always the plants looks good in any area, and hence it will improve the aesthetic of the site. It will create the habitat for the other organisms as well. For example, insects, for example, the small animals, for example, there are the bacteria. The habitat is provided by the plants nearly to the every organism. So here the habitat creation can occur, aesthetics can be enhanced, and it can also restore the ecological function of the site. So using the plant is a very natural way of the cleaning the environment, because these plants can improve overall health of the ecosystem. It can increase the aesthetic, it can create the many habitats, it can restore the ecological function of the site, and hence this particular method, that is the phytoremediation, is of a great advantage when it compared with the other methods in which we clean up the contaminated water or the soil. Okay, now the combined effect of these advantages makes the phytoremediation very cost competitive and the remediation technology. Okay, so it's a cost competitive, not too much of the money is involved. It will also increase the aesthetic, it will also create the habitat, it can also improve the ecological function of the site. So there are many advantages regarding this particular phytoremediation. Okay, now consider the third one, that is the alternative treatments. Whatever the alternative treatments we are using for the cleaning the water and the soil, see, more labor and the energy intensive are they, because other technique which apart from the phytoremediation will always require more labor and the energy inputs. Often it is more costly and it is unsustainable as well. But the phytoremediation is a cost effective technique. It is also the sustainable technique. We can use for this, we can use this technique for thousands of years, right? So an easy to do technique, and that is why it has a third advantage, that not much of the labor is involved, not much of the energy is involved, which is actually required when you take the another method for the cleaning of water and the polluted soil. Now, these alternative treatment could require the complete removal of the contaminants and the medium in which it is contained. Okay, that is soil, water, or the plants. Now, the contaminant storage or the disposal of all runoff and the erosion from the site, or the addition of the soil water amendments. So, there are many other problems if we use the other methods for the cleaning of water and the soil. But if we go for the phytoremediation, it can simply overcome all of these other problems. Okay, so this is the third advantage of the phytoremediation. Now, not only advantage, but there are also some limitations regarding to the phytoremediation technique as well. Now, see, the very first limitation of the phytoremediation is that the effectiveness may be reduced outside the growing season. Okay, when the plants are dormant, because the plants, as you know, plants has this one property, that plants are not active throughout the year. There is some portion of the year when the plants are dormant, and when they are in the dormant stage, the phytoremediation will not be effective. So the dormant state of the plant can actually a limitation for the phytoremediation technique. Now this phytoremediation works on the sites with the low level of the contamination. This is the second problem. If the low level of contamination is there, then and only then the phytoremediation is going to create its magic. But without the, if there are the much of the contamination is occurred on that side, then in such a side, majority of the plant species will not able to grow there. So the phytoremediation has this limitation that it should limit itself to the small contaminated areas only, and it will not go further than that, because the plants did not have ability to grow in a much polluted areas. Okay, now because these are sites have the reduced risk, and the immediate cleanup may not be required. Okay, so if the area is less contaminated and no emergency is there to recover that particular land, then and only then the phytoremediation will work. But if the pollution is more and we want the to clean this particular soil as soon as possible, then in such a case the phytoremediation will not work. Okay. Now the second limitation is that the high level of contaminants could limit the plant growth. For example, if there are many contaminants which are present within the rhizosphere, then in such a case, the plant will not grow properly, because these contaminants are little like a poison, and hence absorbing this poison will limit the plant growth. Rooting depth may limit the effectiveness of the phytoremediation as well. That is, if the roots are growing till this far, for example, as you can see in this picture, so the area of working is this only. Okay, now this portion of the soil is not clean up by these particular phytoremediation technique. Okay, these phytoremediation techniques are only useful within the rhizosphere area, wherever the plant's roots are growing. These roots can do their work, but outside this area, this particular soil will not be clean up if it is already polluted. Okay, so the effectiveness of the phytoremediation will limit to the rhizospheres only, because plants can take the pollutants as deep as only their roots grow. Okay, if their roots are growing to this area, from this area only they can uptake the pollutants, not from this area. Okay, so the area of influence of a plant can be defined as the bottom of the root zone. Okay, so this plant's area of influence is only the area in which these particular roots are growing. Okay, so top of the vegetation of the conpai, then the surface area is protected by the plant conpai and the residue cover. Okay, so you can see simply that this is the working area of the plant, and outside this working area, this plant will not do anything to control the pollution. Okay, so this is the second limitation of the phytoremediation. Now the third one is the toxic substances may enter the food chain. Now see, for example, you have plant a tree. Okay, for what purpose? For phytoremediation, and all of the sudden these are heavy metals or the problematic contaminants were present within the body of a plant now. But what happened, as you know, these are plants are consumed by the herbivores. Then these are pollutants may enter into the herbivore body, and herbivores are in turn eaten by the carnivores. Okay, then it will transfer to the carnivore, then to the top carnivore. So in this way, these pollutants can be transferred to the food chain. This is the major problem regarding the phytoremediation. If you are doing the phytoremediation by using the plants, simply you have to keep these plants away from the food chain. It should not be consumed by the herbivores, because this literally facilitates the transferring of the pollutants right from the plants to the whole of the ecosystem. So this is the major drawback of the phytoremediation, that the pollutant can enter into the food chain via the grazers, birds, and the other animals, and that consume the leaves, seeds of the plants, right, which is used for the phytoremediation. For example, we are using this particular tree for the phytoremediation, and we have safeguarded this tree from the animals, but the birds can land upon this tree and can start to eat the leaves or the seeds of this plant, and through these birds it can enter into the whole of the ecosystem. So this is the major drawback of the phytoremediation. Okay, now consider the fourth one. If you want to burn the leaves or the limbs of the plant containing the harmful chemical, this could literally contaminate the air. For example, we have used these plants for the phytoremediation, and now all of the contaminants were present in this plant, and we have taken out this plant and we have burned it. So literally all of the pollutants will go into the air. So we have on the one hand reduced the soil pollution, and on the other hand we have increased the air pollution. So doing the phytoremediation will not work here, because the one type of pollution is going to reduce, but other type of the pollution will going to increase in this particular process. So these are the four major limitations regarding the phytoremediation. Okay, so we have understood what do you mean by the phytoremediation, what is the process of phytoremediation, what are the 6 different types of the phytoremediation. After that, we have studied the 3 major advantages of the phytoremediation, and finally we have understood the 4 major limitations of the phytoremediation.